My name is Craig Rainey. They call me the Renaissance Man. Welcome to my podcast. What do you say we get started? Whew. Well, it's been a couple of weeks since I have been behind the microphone and wanted to let you know that I've been on vacation. And I learned a couple things while I was on vacation. And before I get started on that, let me encourage y'all to hit the like button. It's fun, easy to do. I do it every day. And be sure to follow us. If you want to talk to me directly, my email is craig@craigrainey.com. If you want to check out information, bio, whatever, my website is craigrainey.com. I also like you to check out my blog site, which is Craig Rainey Magazine, which is craigrainey.net. If you just look up Craig Rainey Magazine, you'll catch me. But anyway, for me, it's a Sunday afternoon. And as I mentioned, I've been on vacation, and I learned something, and I wanted to share that with you. For those of you who don't know me, and I do have a job. I have a regular day job, as in addition to being an author and the many other things that I do. And it's expensive to be a Renaissance man. And part of that is, paying for my mansion with my pool on the golf course and that kind of thing. But I do digress. Anyway, my wife and I, we went on vacation, and we went to Canada. She is Canadian, so we went up to visit her family, and we started off, she is from the Vancouver area, specifically Victoria, which is over on Vancouver Island. Her family's from there, and she was born in Vancouver but raised in Victoria. And that is such a beautiful part of the world. Probably the most beautiful I've ever seen, and I'm pretty well traveled. But we started off in Vancouver, and then we rented a car. Actually, a Ford Expedition. Give it props, man. This thing is nice. We drove from Vancouver to the Okanagan, which is Canada's version of Napa Valley. And it's funny because British Columbia is kind of like the California of of Canada, including the politics. They're very left, and I heard a whole bunch about it because it's funny because they tell me they're not big fans of the United States. You guys, you have so much to improve on. And in fact, one of her relations told me she doesn't have an air conditioner in her house, and it was up around, and I learned to convert Celsius, so it was up around 82, 85 degrees, and the house was staying that temperature during the night. I said, man, I got to put some air conditioning on this thing. So I went over to Home Depot, and I bought a fan and a couple other things that they needed there. And anyway, what her relation told me is, she goes, you need to slow down on that American consumerism. And I said, this isn't American consumerism. This is family taking care of somebody. You need a fan because it is hot in here. So anyway, $17 solved that. But it's funny being criticized for American consumerism, but I notice that anytime our family comes to the United States, it doesn't matter if they come to visit us in Austin or they go to Palm Springs or wherever else they go, I would say 80% of their time during the day is shopping. They go to here at the Domain, which is a big high-end retail shopping center. They really badmouth us about our strip malls, as they call it. And anyway, well, I'll tell you what, they eat it up when they're here, though. But when I'm up there, it's don't bring your American consumerism here. Dang you, we are socialists, and that's how we are. And anyway, they're not quite that bad, but still. But to go back to my story, so we went up to the Okanagan, and anyway, one of her relations, again, they have this house they just built overlooking Lake Okanagan. It's just beautiful. And so my wife and I, they had a suite downstairs they rent out, and my wife and I, we were able to stay there for 5 days overlooking this beautiful lake, beautiful weather. And here in Austin has its own beauty. Texas has its own beauty, and I'm in love with it. I'm 6 generations deep. I'm as Texan as you can get, but that is some beautiful country up there. And spent a whole lot of time sitting there out on the balcony over, and I mean, we're up on on the side of a mountain overlooking this beautiful lake. And this lake is 90 miles long and 2 miles wide where we are, and a few boats on it, but it's just beautiful blue and pine trees, and got the vineyards down below me. Anyway, so I was out there with my laptop and just started writing. And the reason I mentioned working and that I have a day job, and I mentioned this vacation, is integral to what I want to bring to you today. I feel that most of the time I'm pretty prolific. I can, on an average day, I can bang out 1,000 words, and with my blogs and some of the short stories that I'm writing, and of course I'm always working on a novel. But I was there for 5 days, and I must have written nearly 6,000 words, and it might be 55, somewhere in the neighborhood, but it was a lot. And I found that because I was on vacation and I was in this beautiful place, and my wife pointed out to me, she said, well, Craig, maybe the reason that you're not as productive, and this was after we talked about on vacation, we're on the plane coming back, she goes, well, maybe the reason you're not as productive when you're back home is because your office is not just your writing sanctuary, it's also your work office, where you run your consulting company. And I said, yeah, it could be that. I'm willing to discount that, but it could be true, because I found that while I was there, if I had 5 minutes, because that laptop was set up all the time, if I had 5 minutes while she was getting dressed, we're ready to go out, go do something, I jumped on there and I wrote a little bit on my novel. And I just really, really felt free. I felt just really artistically motivated and full of information and full of that artistic content that comes out on the page when you write. And any of you out there who are authors like I am, you know what I mean. When it flows, it just goes, and you can't stop it. In fact, there are times I don't want to go to bed. I can write for hours, and it's not tiring. It's energizing. So I decided, when I was on the plane coming back on that giant 4-hour trip, I decided that I was going to find a way to bottle this energy, this enthusiasm. And I wanted to go through it in my mind and say, okay, well, what was different there? The obvious things. I've got jobs. I got a job going here. I've got bills to pay. Maintaining the house, maintaining my vehicles. Whatever it may be. Just that stuff that happens every day that we all get involved in that takes up so much of our time. And I guess if I was a full-time author and that's all I did, maybe I could access that all the time, because my sanctuary would be my office. That's where, and I find that many writers that I've studied and studied their methods and what makes them successful, they'll say, well, I've got a specific place I go to write, and it is completely separate from anything else that I do. And when I go in there, I'm committed to doing that. And by nature, I reject that, and I rebel against that. And the reason for it is I think that, okay, I'll put it this way. I think that if you have so little self-control, if I have so little self-control and my self-discipline is so weak that I have to isolate myself to a certain place so I can do what I love and do that job, what does that say about me? Should I be able to do it anywhere? Should I be in a crowded airport with my laptop and be able to produce something? And I admit that there are distractions that come up. But, I feel like that, and I'm here in my office right now. This is where I do my podcast. It's where I write. It's where I work. It's where I do everything. I've got my bookshelf behind me and world map, and I've got my atomic clock, and I've got everything here that, I'm surrounded by my things, and, my drums. I've got djembes around, because for those of you who don't know, I was a professional drummer for years, and did some touring, artist image development with other artists, this kind of thing, and so drums were a big part of my life, as was music, and so I'm just, how can I do that here? How can I make myself creative here? And I think that the things that are said about, well, turn the TV off. Yeah, TV's a big time waster, and I'm one of those folks that I enjoy watching TV, I like a good movie, although nowadays I think I don't know if y'all are aware of this, but most movie production companies, they work on a 20 film philosophy. And so what they'll do is they'll say, well, we'll make 20 films. And there's some that do 10, but we'll make 20 films. And out of that 20, one's going to be a hit, and that one will pay for all the rest of them. The rest of them, hopefully they'll pay for themselves. But that 20, that one of those 20 is really it's going to hit big enough and be fiscally solid enough and profitable enough that it'll keep us in business. And I find that, man, that during the other 19 that are out there, it is really tough to watch. I've been watching some movies recently, and I'm not real critical of the writing. You would think I would be. I'm really not, but sometimes it just comes out and slaps you between the eyes and goes, man, this is some really bad writing. I was watching, what was that? It was something recently. See, these guys were Marines, blah, blah, blah. Oh, yeah. I watched the new Red Dawn, which came out in 2012. I'm just talking about the one that came out. It was 84, 85, that one with Patrick Swayze. This one came out with one of those, what's that guy's name? Anyway, the guy that played Thor. I'm sorry, I'm not good. I should be better with names than I am, especially coming out and talking about it. But this is a little bit of stream of consciousness, so I haven't done all my homework. But anyway, at one point, the Marines arrive, and these guys start doing all this, talking all this Marine talk. Semper Fi, blah, 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 and everything else. Oh, man, who wrote this? A kid? Obviously, somebody that spent a little time in the Marines did it, and so we got to listen to some really bad dialogue and just over-the-top stuff. And anyway, so I really have trouble watching a lot of these movies, but sports, I am a San Antonio Spurs fan, and anytime the Spurs are on, which right now Summer League's on, so I've been watching the young guys. It's not real easy being a Spurs fan right now, especially after the dynasty. Before the dynasty of Tim Duncan, Tony Parker, and Manu Ginobili, I was a Spurs fan then, and it was not easy to be a Spurs fan. Love you, David Robinson. Man, we just didn't get there until Tim Duncan was drafted. But anyway, so Spurs come on. I'm gonna, I record all that. I'm kind of a golf fan. The British Open, which they like to be called the Open, but I call it the British Open. It was on, and I watched some of that, and of course Tour de France. I do not ride bicycles. It doesn't fit my butt to ride a bike. When I was a kid, I did, but not anymore. But those are some of the greatest athletes in the world. So these are the things that I watch. And as you may know, when you're watching sporting events, they're 3 or 4 hours. They're a big commitment of time and a big time waster. So these are the things that I guess are my TV vices. My time wasting vices. That's what those are. But so this is what I've come up with. And the reason I'm going to share this with you is because if you have trouble like I do being prolific, and only because life gets in the way, because you love writing, you love producing something, you love what's inside your head, you love being able to convey that through via the written word, and you find that, man, I just wish I could do it more, because I truly believe that I should be publishing at least 2 full-length novels every year, at least that. And this year, we're in July, and I haven't yet come out with A Reasonable Sin. I've been promising that thing since March. And it's just, we've been so busy with my business, and I'm going to give you every other excuse in the world, and, 2 weeks worth of vacation and this and that. And but we writers and we artists, we have a very short lifespan, a very short shelf life. And let me say lifespan. It's a little more harsh, but it's much more accurate. We're going to live, 80 years? And during that 80 years, let's say that you started writing the time that you were 16. Let's make my math easy, 20 years old. And you were able to, if at that point you were able to put out 2 books a year, and you're going to live another 60 years, well, that's only 120 books. And, I say only, who wouldn't love to have 120 books on the shelves right now? But, you got to make it a part of the relationship to you that your family is, that your friends are. You've got to invite that creativity and that time into your day every day. And for those of us who have gym memberships and we pay that $30, $40 a month, we don't ever darken the door. I mean, we can't put our writing in that same category. We can't do that. This isn't one of those things you go, you know what, well, I overate this weekend, but on Monday I'm starting my diet. We can't say, well, I didn't really write this weekend, but Monday I'm going to write 1,000 words a day until I get it in there. But so I think that the key to it is to create the habit. And as a professional salesperson for years, and I used to train salespeople, motivational speaking, that kind of thing. But one of the things that we used to say is it takes 21 days to create a habit. And I would recommend to do what I'm going to do is every day write something. And hopefully your book's going on and you can write your novel and you can work on that. Let's say that your novel is the only thing you want to work on, that's your goal. And I've got that going on right now. And what I find is I get plot block, which if you look at one of my other episodes, we talk about plot block. I never get writer's block. I'm a blabbermouth, and I talk and I write at the same level. I can write all the time about anything. And I look out the window and I see solar panels. I'll give you my opinion on solar panels, and I can give you probably 10,000 words right now on solar panels. The weather, golf, politics, anything, you can write on that. And if you've got a good blog site, which I hope that everybody's developing their platform, you should have a blog site, you should have a podcast, you should have, you should be on Kindle. And, they've got those it's a novella thing. What is it? Kindle Vella is what they call. And I've got one up right now, 2 episodes, or 2 editions, if you want to call it, of one that I'm doing. But, you should have that. And so it gives you that outlet to write anytime you want to. It gives you that outlet to be prolific. But in the case of a book, if I run into plot block, what I will do is I'll go back to page 1, chapter 1, and I'll start putting the finish on it, because as everybody knows who's written and edited a book and, put your different drafts into it, you've got the rough draft. Maybe it's outlined first, but then you got your rough draft, and then you go through it again. You polish it up a little bit more, maybe throw some more adjectives in there, maybe a little more description, maybe polish up the dialogue a tad, or maybe flesh out that character. And then you go through the third time. And the third time is what I call putting the polish on the car. And that's one where I'm throwing the polish on, I'm compounding that, and I'm getting that deep shine out of my story. And I sometimes I do 4, but typically 3 is for me. And so what I do is if I'm on my first draft and I start running into little plot block, oh man, I painted myself in a corner, what am I going to do? Well, I just go back and I start working on the story from page 1 and just go through and find, do a little bit of editing, do some moving things around. And I find that it really helps me. And if you're 300 pages into the book, it's going to take a while before you get to it. But let's say that you're 50 pages, 60 pages in. Well, you can, polish up 50, 60 pages, and then you get all of a sudden you're on page 61 going, well, I found my way again. Not to mention, as a writer, you want to make sure that your voice is consistent. And I'm talking about the narrative voice. You want to make sure that if your book is bouncy and happy and a lot of smiles and this kind of thing, it stays that way within the limits of the arc that you want your book to take. If you're writing a Western and you're speaking with a country's tone the entire time, and you want to make sure that you keep that cowboy talk, that cowboy feel, well, you want to make sure that you do that. And sometimes you have to go back and read through that and get that momentum back so that you have that same tone. And I'm not saying you're writing with an accent. I'm talking about stylization. That's what I'm talking about. And anyway, so that's always helpful. So by the time that you get to page 60 and you're going to page 61 now, you can carry on that same feel, that same stylization, that same style that you got. Because I've read books where I went from one chapter to the next, and I went, man, the guy obviously wrote this chapter on a different day than he wrote the one previous. He wasn't nearly in as good a mood, or he wasn't as creative, or this kind of thing. And these are things that you can polish up. It gets your momentum going. But for me, what I find when I go back, I really throw the polish on my story, and I find things that, well, I'd rather say it this way, and I'd rather do this, or looking at after a little bit of time has passed, I don't think that my reader is going to know much about what's going on in this scene, because I don't think I've put enough description in to talk about where they are. I mean, if it's in a house and I just talk about, well, character A and character B are talking, and they move a chair. And so, a chair where? What are we talking about? Make sure they know that it's in the living room of a house, or in a mobile home, or in an apartment, or whatever it may be, in a mansion. You want to you want to make sure those things are done. But going back to the being prolific and talking about writing every day, if you go back and you start writing, because when you wrote where you are right now in your project, there was excitement. There was creativity. And ladies and gentlemen, that excitement and that creativity it's contagious. You'll get right back into it. You'll find that, oh yeah, I see where this is going. Boom, let's get into it. It's like warming up for your workout. Let's get some stretching in there. Let's get those muscles warmed up. And that's what you're doing. You're writing muscle. You're warming that up. So, just big thing is sit down. And one of the things I said a minute ago is, how many of us have gym memberships that we pay for every month, but we never darken the door? Well, it's the same thing with writing. Darken the door. Open up that laptop. Fire up that, if you're writing in Word or Scrivener or wherever you're writing it, if you're a screenwriter, Final Draft, open that up and get going. And, that you'll find that your enthusiasm will grow. You'll get that enthusiasm, the creativity warmed up, and next thing you know, you're creating beautiful things again, and you're creating for that book, and you're coming closer to the end. And man, I find myself going, if I can just get to fade to black, it's never writing a script, or if I can just get to the end, if I can just get to the end of the story, I'll be a happy man. And we used to say this: being successful can be defined this way. Success is not achieving a worthwhile goal, because once you've achieved that goal, you have stopped. Success is the continuous journey towards achieving a worthwhile goal. And then once you achieve it, set that next goal and keep going, because success is that movement towards it, not the stop at the end when you've achieved it. And so the same thing with writing. When you come to the end of that book, I've already got my next one. The next one is that I'm working on after I finish Reasonable Sin is Rise of an Outlaw. I'm going to do the sequel to Masquerade Agua Caliente, where Cap Jackson takes over because, bad things happen to the main character in the other one. But so Cap Jackson takes over, and the Rise of an Outlaw, he's a young guy, and it's going to show his journey. And I'm already figuring that in. I'm already working on that. I've already got some of the outline done. I've got, I've started to set up the structure for that book. And but on this one, Reasonable Sin, it's really getting good. I'm enjoying what I'm writing, and it's getting pretty complicated, and that scares me a little bit at times, because how complex this story can get and how complex it does get. A lot of writing is research, because I've got a lot of sharpshooters out there that say, well, it's not this, it's not that. In Masquerade Agua Caliente, there's a Tonton Mesa that I refer to there. Well, it doesn't exist. Everything else exists, but that didn't exist because I couldn't find the right thing to make it work. So I threw that in, and I was criticized. It was a very small part of the book. It didn't affect the plot at all, but I was criticized because one of my sharpshooter readers said, "Hey, there's no such place," and they're right. There wasn't. That strictly that's poetic license for me. Creative license. I did that. But you really, especially in a book like I'm doing here, which this is an action thriller, kind of a spy novel, and there are a lot of moving parts, and there are a lot of people that really consume a lot of espionage stuff, and they know a lot about the process and the different agencies and everything else, and the difference between one agency and the other, and what roles they play. So you really, by you I mean me, I really have to do my research and really have to be careful. And I find that a lot of times that research will slow me down too, which is my next point. If you're doing research on a book, make sure you take a lot of notes. And the reason I say that is because even when you do research, make sure that you're writing. Don't just copy and paste. Scrivener allows you to pull an article into your notes. And I think that's good because, sometimes I don't want to write, 4,000 or 5,000 words of something that I'm referencing. But a lot of times, you just want to write that in. And how I do it with my notes is I will write it in showing, well, my main character, Carson Brand, this is how it applies to him. Because Carson Brand, It's like he's going to play mahjong in this particular. I would never do that, but mahjong. Okay, well, let's know about mahjong. Let's know where it came from. Let's know where they're blah blah blah. And so you want to keep that writing flow going. You want to make sure that anytime that you're doing anything, writing is a part of it, because that is what we do. Is we're writers. We're banging out words. We're creating stories. That's what we do. And I think if you get in the habit of writing all the time, and whether it's find that time during the day, you can go like going to the gym, find that time, just go do it and get started. You're going to find that once you start, you're not going to be able to stop. In fact, you'll be late for your next appointment at your job because you're writing and you don't want to stop. And that's when you know you're back into the writing. And that's when you know you've done what you should do. Ladies and gentlemen, I just wanted to share this with you because one of the things I picked up when I was in that beautiful country in the Okanagan in Canada is that being that I had nothing to do as far as work or working on the house or paying bills or anything else, I was just out there. And I brought my laptop, and it's a beautiful country. I did my body and my mind, and I did it what I most naturally tend to do and what I want to do and what I yearn to do and what I'm driven towards. And that was writing. Find a way to write. Don't be Craig. Don't let things get in the way. Because I pledged you, I'm not going to let things get in the way. Because I had so much fun and I wrote so much and it was so good. And the quality was excellent because my mind was free to travel to these places where my character was going, and I could look around and see what he saw, and I could bring that to my reader. And I recommend y'all do the same thing. But if you've got any comments, I would certainly love to hear them. Contact me, Craig at CraigRainey.com. Email me. Let me know what you think. And check out my blog site, Craig Rainey's Magazine. But again, hit that like button. It's easy. It's fun. I do it all the time. Thanks for your time. Bye.